Good afternoon. Welcome to um, today's broadcast of the VRS Warrior Wallet. As always, Kevin Warrer, mortgage broker extraordinaire with Revolution Mortgage. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, just the landscape of the land a little bit. And then I want to talk about, so one thing that, that we covered last week is here in Columbus, Ohio, there's a lack of inventory, which is making people act abnormal when it comes to buying houses, and people will offer 30,000 plus and all that, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. I don't think it. I could be wrong, and I think
I don't think so either.
But in some parts of the United States, that's not the issue. That you do have not an abundance of inventory, but you have some inventory that is going to basically going to, I think it's going to, right the course. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that that I think that with what's going on, I think it's creating the I don't know what the right term is. I think it's creating a dynamic that we have never seen before, and I think and that kind of worries me, because I think eventually we are going to hit a bubble. I mean, not today, not tomorrow, but sometime in the future, we're going to hit a bubble. What do you think that looks like then? Do you think it looks like 2007? Do you think it looks like 2000, the 2008? Or do you think it looks like 1996? Or
yeah, I mean, this is it's kind of its own unique situation. I mean, the biggest issue with the 2008 situation was people were just getting away with the appraisal companies coming in way too high on value on stuff, and they were lending on just way too much money on a property that wasn't worth that. And then when everything basically hit the fan there, people had loans out for $150,000 on $100,000 home, and it just that's why everything was tanking. The values dropped so quickly. And I mean, we are going up really fast in value. I mean, I still think it's progressive in a point where, as long as we have this desire to move to Columbus, and I mean, this can be used for any city where this is going on. I mean, as long as the desire is there to live here, I mean, I don't think it's going to tank like it did then. I think the only difference this time, and I do think it's a unique situation because we've never seen this before. I mean, it's something that's hard to predict, but I don't think it's going to crash like it did then. If anything, I just think values are going to kind of level out more. But the last year it was, I think I read something where they were saying the average was like a 5% gain in equity and in value across the United States. But I mean, there were areas,
and historically that gain, yeah, and historically, for people that are listening, historically real estate appreciates at about 3.2% a year. That's historical averages across the board. I think that's about.
They were saying nationwide 5%, but I mean, there's areas here in Columbus where we went up 20%. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. So I don't think there's ever been a situation like this we can really compare it to. So that's why it's why uncharted territory.
Yeah, it is uncharted territory. And for the veterans out there that are listening, what that means for you is that if you're looking to get a house, there's a lot of programs out there that are available. First time home buyers, there's some grant programs. And if you have questions, reach out to Kevin, because he, like I said, he's licensed across the United States except in New York. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we can figure something out. I mean, I like to be the one-stop shop. So I mean, if I can't do something, I'm not just gonna tell you to kick rocks. I'm gonna get you in the right direction and make sure I can help you out. So,
and the thing about it is that if nothing else, there's no one ever drowned in too much information. And one of the things about it has been that that go talk to a mortgage broker to see where your situation is at, and then talk to them about because I think one of the things that is going to happen, and honestly, I don't know what there's some things in the economy that is worrisome. People are complaining about inflation, but at the same time, corporate profits are an all-time high, and that's I don't know if that's correct or not, but I think does the Fed? Do you think that the Fed raises the rates anytime in the next 6 months or 9 months?
I mean, rates have already gone up. It's really weird how you hear in the news they're all about getting information out there really quickly when rates are down and rates are low. But I mean, over the last 6 months, I mean, rates have been creeping up probably about 0.5% so far. I mean, we were somewhere in the mid threes, and I mean, we're closer to somewhere around 4 now. So rates are slowly going up. You just don't hear about it. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And you got to be careful when you're looking at a lot of these advertisements where you'll see something online where they'll say, oh, refinance, and they'll do something like a 2% rate. And the problem with that is it's smoke and mirrors 99% of the time, because what they're doing with that is they're trying to advertise a really low rate. And then in the very fine print at the bottom, which no one looks at, I mean, they're going to put on there that this rate is spending 2 points, and a point is 1% of your loan amount. So if you have a loan amount of $200,000, 1 point is going to be $2,000. So when they're advertising this rate and it's 2 points, that could be $4,000 that you're paying for that. But the problem is most people don't read that. Most people don't even know what a point is. So then they've done an application, they get connected with this person, and they might not even say anything to you at the very end. You start looking at documents, and all of a sudden you got an extra $4,000 in here in fees, and they just hooked you. It's the bait and switch almost, and it's borderline illegal to do that, but they get away with it because it's in the fine print there, and by clicking on that, they're assuming that you're reading it. So you just got to be careful. Just because you see a low rate, it doesn't mean that you're not paying for it. So I always like to start conversations with people that way, because they'll say, oh, well, I saw this rate on this website. And I'm like, yeah, well, did you read the bottom? And, every time I'll go and I'll ask them where they got the information, and I'll show it to them. And, it's always on there that they're charging it. A lot of the big banks and online lenders out there, they automatically build usually 1 or 1.5 points in, just so they look good for advertising. And like I said, you don't really know it a lot of the times until you get to the end, and then all of a sudden there's these extra fees in there, and they'll try to disguise it too. They'll just say, oh, well, that's just part of your closing costs. Well, yeah, technically it is, but if you were working with me, I'm going to give you that option where you don't have to pay anything, or we can buy down the rate and get discounted rates. So that's why the fees and the closing costs with some people are going to be somewhere around like $7,000, and typically with me, on average, it's in between $3,000 and $4,000. So you just got to be careful about that.
And we just posted on here for you guys that are, if you're in here, there you can go to vetloaninfo.com, which is Kevin's site, and they will give you some information on there. Here's the thing that I want to reiterate is there's a thing called yield spread premium, or that people are supposed to tell you what is in your your mortgages and your what the fees are. And one of the things that happens is that a lot of and I don't know if I want to use the thing that Annie said, and but people get house fever. Does that make sense? Like, they want to close on the house, and
oh yeah, especially someone that's been looking forever. You got this situation where I could have pre-approved somebody 6 months ago, and they're making offers, and something doesn't get accepted, and when it finally does,
right,
they are so excited about it, and they're the adrenaline's going, and you got to slow down and make the right decision, because sometimes you're so excited you got an offer accepted that you're not thinking clearly about what terms were accepted. So you got to be careful. It's a big decision, it's a big purchase, it's a lot of money, it's a long term. You got to make sure you're doing things correctly. And I always
and
am here to help with that.
Half a percentage point over 30 years or 15 years is a lot of money that you're going to wind up paying. I mean, just
yeah. I mean, it can be, I mean, sometimes it makes sense, depending on where your credit score is and how much it might cost to get a little bit low of a rate. You can always take that amount and basically divide it out and see where the math is. If you're going to be in a home for at least 10 years and you're only spending $2,000 maybe to get a discount, you can divide that out the number of years, how much it's going to cost you. Sometimes it makes sense to buy the rate down. It can save you thousands. And then other times, if maybe you moved here for a job, you got a 3-year contract, you don't really want to spend anything in prepaid because you're not going to be there long enough to get an advantage for it. So sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Everybody's situation is a little unique. It's prepaids are something that typically will make sense for somebody that's moving into a long-term home. But if you're not sure, and it might just be a 3, 4, 5 year place you're going to be, so you might not want to spend a lot of money on it. So just gotta do the math on it, make sure it's a benefit for you.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I mean, I know we covered a lot of the same information, but I think that the problem is with with people today is that the internet, and I will say this, there's a lot of places like Investopedia where you can go on the internet and there's a lot of answers out there. I think one of the problems that you're seeing today, and this is just my, like I said, my opinion, is there's so much information thrown at buyers and sellers that you've got to wade through all of it to to see what is real and what is not. One of the things you've brought up, and Annie has brought up the same thing, and in some of the shows that we've done, is there's no accepted practice of who pays the closing costs. Sometimes it's the buyer, sometimes it's the seller, there's no, it's not always accepted. I mean, that's not, that's part of your negotiation. I mean, so people are saying, oh, the buyer is always going to pay the closing costs. Not always.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's something that goes in the contract. I mean, closing costs typically, that's when you're buying a home, that's your responsibility unless you bring it up. I mean, the thing that's more confusing really is like title fees. I mean, a lot of times with the title insurance, if you're getting it, who's paying it, and Central Ohio, it's most of the time the seller's covering something like that, and that's usually why the seller is the one who's picking the title company. Other parts of Ohio, the buyer's taking care of more title fees. So yeah, that's something that's kind of up in the air, and it varies a lot across the country. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you need to look at all angles on that, and if you're not bringing it up and talking about it, then you can't expect it. You can't assume anything. You got to talk about it. You got to bring it up.
Yeah, and title fees, and I will just say something you've brought up. Title fees are different in each state. In some states, you have a title fee is $150 or $250.
Mm-hmm.
Other states, it's $400. I mean, there's no standard.
Each state and even each title company too. I mean, it's all across the board. Right. It's all over the place with that stuff.
And the reason I bring this up is that people go out there and they say, well, I'm just going to use this as an example. It says, well, my cousin or my brother or they know of a family member, somebody that did this, and this worked for them. That's great. That's not necessarily your deal. Right. There are people that in some states you don't need a home inspection. And I'm not sure I'm going to say this in some states that have homesteading, the appraisal can be different. Like I'll give you an example. Oklahoma has homesteading, which means that you can't, if they have, if you foreclose on the property, the foreclosure process is completely different than other states. And they have the Homestead Act protects the owner's stake in the property from foreclosure. You have to get them, you can't, foreclose on a property and let's say they own 200,000, the properties, they have 200,000 in equity. You can't buy that house for 50 grand at a foreclosure. There's
Right.
a Homestead Act. And the reason I bring this up is because some states protect the owner of the property different than other states.
Right.
The worst state in the United States, bar none, to be a homeowner or to be a renter is Arkansas. Bar none. They have the least amount of protections for foreclosure. So everything, and the reason I bring this up is if you're not familiar with what is, right now we have a society where people are moving back and forth across different, we're more, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, more transient of a society, more mobile, and people are moving back and forth. And the reason you want to talk to Kevin is because you're familiar with, you have agents in multiple states, that know the landscape that will help you, guide through the pitfalls where, some people I don't know. I'll give you an example. Florida lets you protect your property from bankruptcy. Not everybody does that. So, I mean, it just, these are the questions you want to be, like I said, you want to talk to a professional like Kevin in order to get this information, because it protects you and your investment. And for most people, not all, but for most people, buying a house is the single biggest investment they ever make. Buying a car. Is that correct? Is that still correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Typically the biggest investment for people is always going to be the home. It's the longest investment too. It's something that you're going to be paying for typically the rest of your life. A lot of people never ever pay off a home. It's usually I think the average is 7 years that most people live somewhere, then they move or they upgrade or they can downgrade. So, it's something that you're usually always going to have as a payment. A lot of people move or they refinance or whatever they want to do. So it's something that's kind of always going to be there. But, if you're renting a place, then that's always going to be there too. And you never get anything at the end of that. You're not building equity. You're paying someone else's equity and someone else's bills is what you're doing. So getting a home is super important.
Yeah. And I think what people are also, forgetting is that, you always, and this is, we're coming up into tax season, and one of the things I tell people is that, you have a CPA look at your taxes, don't just trust H&R Block or one of the, the tax services, for what it's worth. H&R Block isn't always the best approach to, doing something.
Right. I always have someone look at my taxes. I mean, I can do them.
Well, you're a millionaire. Stop it. You're a millionaire.
Oh, right. I wish. Yeah, I wish.
And
I got plenty of debt, George.
Yeah, but but the thing about it is that even a CPA, I think most CPAs are $75 an hour. Having them go over your taxes is worth it. I think the other
absolutely.
I think the other thing is that again, it goes into something that I bring up before, is that you want to be prepared for some of the pitfalls, and again, one of the things that I say, because one of my big concerns is, especially with social media, and it's not all social media, it's not just is that you have so much information out there, you don't know what is correct and what is not.
Oh yeah, that's a concern with anything. There's just a lot of this info out there is fake, and back to what you were saying about having a friend that did something. I mean, always talk to a professional, whatever it is you're doing. Just because a friend did it doesn't mean it's true. A lot of friends like to make up stories just to make themselves sound cool or important or whatever. So yeah, don't believe everything you say.
And on top, you don't know. And here's the thing: you don't know your friend's financial. You don't know what your friend's financial position is, because it could be, your friend's financial position could be much worse or much better. The one thing that I've learned, and especially in the last couple of years, especially with what happened, is that with COVID and everything else, people's financial position really got exposed. There a lot of the things that there were people out there, that went through foreclosures and all that, and so you don't know if the somebody that is giving you financial information is telling you the truth or not.
Absolutely.
And so that's why, again, go talk to Kevin, go talk to Annie, go to talk to a professional that can give you sage advice to make sure that you are doing the right thing. And to some people, if you're investing or going into a property, it might not be and this is the one thing, Michelle, this is something that, or if they're actually giving you good advice, this is something to think about. Up until Trump, the Trump administration, they had the fiduciary rule for the 401k. That changed. And so now you don't know if that person that is for investments is giving you advice based on the fact that they want to make a commission or they have your best interest in mind. That's right. Changed dramatically. So what I say is go look at it, go talk to a professional. We've covered a lot of ground today. So final thoughts, anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has questions, I've always got time to help people with stuff. Typically when it's colder out like this, it's usually a little bit slower. So my cell phone number is directly on the vetloaninfo.com. So if you guys want to text me, I'll type my email in here too. So George can share that. And just if you have questions or you want to buy something, not even right now, if you're thinking about it a few months down the road, it's always good to start early. Don't drag something out, because typically with a lot of people, there are small things that we need to get fixed. So if you wait to start the process, I always hate that when people wait to start something and, we initiated a conversation 6 months ago and look at that. It's going to take us 6 months to fix something. So it just sucks when you get in that situation. So if your lease is up this year, don't wait a month before to try to start buying a house. Get the process started early. It just makes sense to do that.
Yeah, that is correct. So, did you type out your number?
There you go. And I'll put my cell on here too.
Okay. Let me.
Oh, that's not right. Sorry.
Let me
put
this out there. Yeah, so for any of you, this is Kevin's email, Kevin Lauer at revolutionmortgage.com. And again, at Vet Loan Info. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kevin. And, he's, like I said, mortgage broker extraordinaire, and can answer, and even if you just have a simple question and down the road, that's down the road that say, hey, I'm not ready to buy today, but I'm going to buy, in the next couple months, 2 to 3 months. It's always good to have that in place.
Always good to get things started a few months early.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you again for for supporting VRS, and we will talk to you next time. We're going to sign off, and we'll talk to you in a second.